This is Hunt Nebraska, the official podcast for insight into Nebraska's hunting and shooting sports community. Be sure to give us a follow on Facebook, our space for sharing stories, information, tips, and techniques. Now, Hunt Nebraska. And welcome back to the Hunt Nebraska cabin. We've got a full group here around the table today. Going to be kicking around some thoughts and ideas and having some fun. New face to the show. If you are watching us on YouTube, we do appreciate that. First, he's Jeff, Nebraska Game and Parks. Kayla pushing buttons, making the board happen. Thanks for doing that, Kayla. That's a tougher job than I thought it was.
It is a full-time job.
It is. It is. I'm Hershey. And then the new face, and he's still smiling, so we've just begun this podcast. You can tell. Michael Addison, our brand new, make sure I get this right, Michael, Nebraska's hunting and shooting sports R3 coordinator.
That is correct.
All right. Well, welcome to the podcast. It's first time. I mean, you've been here in the great state of Nebraska and the office for how many days now?
Today's my third day.
Third day.
Yep.
Baptism by fire here, folks.
He doesn't even know where the bathrooms are yet. I mean, brand spank, got that new R3 coordinator smell, just brand spanking new.
I still wander around the halls a little bit, but we'll get it figured out.
And thank goodness we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about that new R3 coordinator smell. That's kind of
we can skip that. We can skip that part.
Well, first of all, we got to let our listeners know a little bit about you. I mean, what's your background? Where are you coming from? Being a Nebraskan for only 3 days. I mean, Nebraskan by choice. I love it. Tell us a little bit about it. Let's hear about the Addison story.
So I'm originally from Northwest Missouri, small little town called Bethany. It's about 3,000 people. Grew up a lifelong hunter, fisher, obviously a big turkey hunter, deer hunter too. I've dabbled in a little bit of pheasant and quail hunting. Haven't done anything like waterfowl yet, but maybe in the future I can do that. Got education background is in marketing, business, but said I've always been a wildlife guy and been an outdoors guy. So real excited to come up here and get a chance to do this R3 role, come work with Nebraska Game and Parks and the National Wild Turkey Federation and kind of help out with wildlife in Nebraska and moving it forward, and excited to see where it goes.
Oh, it's exciting times in the world of R3. And folks, again, you've heard it on our podcast before. The 3 R's are
recruitment, retention, and reactivation.
Now, was that one of the interview questions? Did they ask you to describe each R?
No, they did not. I think they might have asked what one or two of them meant to me personally, or how I would.
We have sneaky ways of making sure he knows what he was talking about. We don't just come right out and say name the 3 R's, but we had some sneaky ways to see if he knew what he was talking about.
Apparently I passed.
Apparently he knew more about what he was talking about than others.
I was just going to say there's a lot of 3 R's out there, so that's pretty good. All right. So you brought up turkey hunting, and obviously we are in the throes of the off season. We're into the month of March. We're kind of in between that gap. I mean, to be quite honest, we talked about it last time, Kayla. The 22-23 season's done, gone.
It is.
The actual 23-24 hunting seasons lay ahead of us. Yeah, we've got the light goose conservation order, and Jeff, you talked about that last time, taking part in that, and going to continue to do that. But again, that's a conservation order, so it doesn't count as one of our hunting seasons. If you missed that, folks, make sure you check that out on our blog site there, or our podcast, either SoundCloud or on YouTube again. But we're going to kind of shift gears because we're kind of thinking turkeys a little bit. We hit that 160-degree day. Now, doesn't that nice warm day kind of feel like, all right, things can happen? Turkey season isn't that far away.
Yeah. Definitely.
When I walk out the door and the birds are chirping, it's just a little warm in the air. It makes me think of sitting in the turkey woods.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Amen.
That's the feeling, yep.
And the Cardinals are starting to sing nice and early, and other things are happening around us. We know we're headed in the right direction. And again, here in the state of Nebraska, March 25th is our traditional archery opener for the spring turkey season. And then the Saturday closest to April 15th, you're going to want to remember this, Michael. Right now, the Saturday closest to April 15th each year is when our regular shotgun season opens here in the great state of Nebraska. The week before that is when the youth season opens for those that have a youth tag, and they can start hunting them with the shotgun as well. And we have that beautiful thing, Jeff, that spring turkey permit. You can use it archery. You can use shotgun. It just depends on what's open and what you want to do.
Pretty liberal conditions really here to hunt in Nebraska. We've pretty much quite a bit of openness to our season and our permit structure. Now, Hershey, I remember the days when, and you probably remember this in Iowa, but the days when, you had some split seasons and you had to early or late, and you had to either buy an archery tag or a shotgun tag, and so theoretically you could buy an archery tag in that early season, which was only a week long, and of course wouldn't do you a lot of good if it snowed that first week. Then you might be a little out. But today, with the season structure we have, it's just one of the coolest seasons in any state, in my opinion. It really makes it easy to get out and be a turkey hunter.
Yep, and we'll have to dive into it, not in this podcast, folks, but in another one, the UNL turkey research that's going across the state of Nebraska. It's already underway, doing some listening, doing some things that'll go on through for quite a while, because they got to get through the spring breeding season and checking our birds and learning more information. And I'm always one of those that, boy, if you're going to manage a wildlife resource, isn't it great to have the best, most up-to-date current information? We make some assumptions sometimes.
Sure helps.
And I'd much rather do it on statistics and numbers and true data than just, I heard Bob over there say something about this, and I think, it seems like it holds true.
Well, aren't we expected to, as a state Fish and Wildlife Agency, to have the most up-to-date numbers and information we can when making decisions? And I think our hunters, that's one of the reasons our hunters respect our agency so much and have such a hold Fish and Wildlife agencies like ours in such high regard, because we do use, and if we don't have, if we think there's more information out there, we go find it. And then we do like we're doing now. We coordinate with universities and we develop studies so that we have that information. So hats off. That's pretty cool.
Yep. There you go. Now we're going to get into now, though, is a little bit more gray area. We're going to try to add a little science to it as best we can. But I'm going to toss this thought out there. There are a lot of options out there, and we're going to help kind of maybe give our input, maybe our thoughts on it, and that's the topic of turkey shotgun shells. What shot shell you might want to think about using, or maybe the one that you're looking at needs a second look at. And just kind of go over and talk a little bit about, the shells that are out there, some of the things to watch out for, some of the things that you're going to want to look for, and that type of stuff. And this is one, folks, we've been having a little bit of fun talking about and debating in the office area, because it's one of those. Boy, Jeff, if you think back to when you first started turkey hunting, what was there for turkey hunting shotgun shells?
Funny you ask that, because the reality of it is there weren't really options back when I started turkey hunting. Whatever you used for pheasant hunting or grouse hunting was likely what you were going to throw in the shotgun for turkey. You didn't have like a special turkey shotgun. I mean, you had a shotgun, and it might be an over-under, it might be a double barrel, it might be a pump, but you had a shotgun, and you went and hunt turkeys if you wanted to. And lead was the only option, as you well know. And, I remember when 3-inch shells started coming out and how cool that was, right? Because you're sitting there, when they started becoming in mass production, and it's like, oh man, we are going to hammer these turkeys now that we can do a 3-inch shell. And so lead was predominant. And then of course you were looking at a couple manufacturers, Federal, Remington, or Winchester, and you could find whatever they had, and you could tell it was for turkeys or for pheasants or whatever, because there'd be a picture of a pheasant or something on the box, and
that helped.
Yeah, that didn't make it too bad. But compared to what we have today, no option. You had no options. You just went and bought a shotgun shell, a box of shells.
It's nice having options, though, right? It's nice having options.
I think we think that, yeah.
But it definitely can get confusing for someone that hasn't done it before. For that new turkey hunter, it can also be confusing for those of us that all right, I have my load. This works well in my shotgun, and it has for several years, and I stocked up on it, and now I'm running low on it, or I'm out, and I want to go back to the store and just buy my old tried and true and tested,
And you can't
and you
find
walk
them
there,
hardly.
and it's not there anymore. It is not there, and that's one thing I'm going to toss out there. We've got some great friends in the firearm industry as well as the ammunition industry, and things are always changing. You got to keep changing, right? I mean, Michael, you've got a little background in marketing. I mean, what happens to a business that just does the same thing year in, year out, expected to sell the same amount every year?
Bad things generally.
Yeah, just ask Blockbuster how that works. I'll tell you right now, we
Excellent
must
point.
evolve. And in the days when you and I started turkey hunting, Hershey, I think you probably still have a few boxes of shells. When they first started coming out with turkey loads, the little 10-shot boxes of turkey loads, 10 shells in a box, I think I still have a few that were $3.99 a box. And
wow.
$3.99 a box,
Wow.
and I think mine are Winchester, and even but back then you're like $3.99 for 10 shells. That is robbery. That is crap. And but you bought them, and they killed turkeys. There's no question about that. If you could buy a turkey load today for $3.99 a box of 10, I think you'd better buy them all by the case.
There are turkey loads now that are what, $10 a shell, $12 a shell, right in there
Easily 10 to 12. Yes. Yeah.
per shell.
To kill
And
a turkey.
What we're going to get into a little bit is, are they worth it? Or, is it worth spending that extra money?
I've got opinions.
What does it take? And that's the thing. That's what we're going to get to, and is a bunch of opinions. And also toss out there that this is something people have been discussing and having opinions on for quite some time. I know, what was it, last week? I tossed that question out amongst the backroom table crew as we were wrapping up some meeting, is how many foot-pounds of energy does it take to kill a turkey?
Yep.
They're a big bird, right? I mean, compared to that pheasant quail you were talking about earlier, Michael, I mean, turkeys that you've harvested usually in the springtime weigh about what?
Usually anywhere 20, 25, 26 pounds.
Big birds.
Those are big birds.
Big birds in northwest Missouri, yep. Here in Nebraska, Jeff, we're probably anywhere from
40 to
out west.
50 pounds usually, yeah.
Got the mutant turkeys.
Yeah, big old red Husker
Yeah.
Toms, we call them.
As you can tell,
20.
in our
22.
regs, it does not allow the weighing of any turkeys here in Nebraska. You're assigned a
Very
weight,
much
and that's what your
discouraged.
turkey weighed.
This sounds like we're going by the bass fishing mantra, the turkey hunting up here.
Yeah,
that
we
it's-
weigh them in the field on the hook.
it was a 10-pound bass, and you won't tell me any
God, that was
different.
at least a 10-pound bass.
Leave it to guys, Caleb. The first turkey was probably weighed, and it weighed in, and someone was bragging about it. Boy, this is a big turkey. It's a 22-pounder. As soon as he told his buddy said, yeah, but I shot a 23-pounder. And then his uncle heard about that, and well, I shot a 24-pounder, and they just grow.
And the first one that was missed
amazing.
and got away was a 30-pounder.
Yeah.
This tall. I mean, they
Well,
were a big bird.
Had 2-inch spurs.
Yeah, 4 of them. Yeah.
So anyway, pretty big birds. I mean, especially compared to pheasants and quail and ducks and even a good number of geese that we come across. 20-pound goose is, I'd almost darn say, non-existent.
Yeah,
But
get real. Them a lot of
we hear
jewelry.
about them. We hear
Lot of
about them,
jewelry.
but no certified scales usually back that up. But they're a big bird. But we tossed out that question, and I did it on purpose because you see that. I went online to figure out how much foot-pound of energy it takes to kill a turkey, and I found a wide range of thoughts out there. Now, this isn't just from people, just any old message board or Facebook site or anything like that. No, these were some folks from firearm industries, folks from ammunition side of things, folks from magazines that are well known and respected and all that. I'm not going to get into specifics, and even some of the individual ammo companies, not the big ones, but the little ones. The more, isn't it kind of interesting? We started with craft beers and breweries and things like that. And now we got smaller ammunition makers once again in the mix. But anyway, the range was from 1.5 foot-pounds of energy up to 6 pounds of
Per pellet.
foot-pounds of energy to
individual
kill a turkey.
pellet, yeah.
Now, somewhere in there probably lies the truth. Don't know what it is, but you also have to take a step back, Jeff, and say, you know what? As a hunter, as average Joe turkey hunter, I have no way to figure out what my foot-pound of energy per pellet is other than by calculation, right? Which is a formula.
It's a formula, and you can do that, the Bornay formula or what have you. But understand this, Hershey. It's what might have been correct even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, certainly, it's changed, right? Because when we started talking about some of those calculations, we were talking about lead. And then we started trying to apply them to steel, so that changed a little bit, right? Because then all of a sudden heavy shot, now the TSS shot, and tungsten iron. What I'm getting at is if a pellet has a different density, different weight, different hardness, its penetration factor or it might be a lot different than another pellet of similar size, but different hardness, different weight, then velocity changes. So I think there's a lot of things that's probably why there's such a wide range, I would imagine.
I'm guessing part of it is, Michael, that us guys usually go bigger. I mean, if you saw what we usually used for rifles on whitetail deer, I'd say we're probably well above the middle ground, so to speak. We usually go bigger. They just look bigger. A big bird, big turkey. Now, that said, I agree. The energy changes.
He just shushed me.
He sure did.
Just like that? No, then hush up. No, listen. Now,
I'm going to
say, for example, a needle. It doesn't take as much energy for that needle to puncture your skin, but what about a wrecking ball?
Oh, you're going diameter.
It's going to take a lot more energy.
I was going to say that the foot-pounds wouldn't change. The minimum probably wouldn't change necessarily. You still require so much to penetrate, but you're talking a little bit smaller.
Diameter, I'm talking the density, I'm talking hardness. There's a lot of factors that come into play, I think, when we're saying that, well, this softer material that was this density took this much energy in foot-pounds, but this harder material with this density might take at different velocities. It results in different energy in foot-pounds.
Interesting concept.
Because how it penetrates is different for all of them. It makes sense if you don't think about it.
I'm going to say there's still, the difference between the wrecking ball and the needle are one's probably doesn't need to penetrate. One's probably working on transfer of energy and one's working on actual getting through. Oh, that's an interesting idea. I hadn't thought about it that way.
The difference is wrecking balls
changes.
Destroy houses, whereas needles don't. That's the difference. That's what I'm trying to get at across.
All right, I'm not sure where that was going. So, first of all, I don't think he's recommending using a wrecking ball on a turkey unless
you can shoot a whole bunch of them downrange.
Jeff's coming in like a wrecking ball.
Boom.
We're gonna have to go. We're gonna have to go with that. But
hey, see that flock? I don't want to see it anymore.
Yep.
Oh, that's funny.
It's my theme song every
So anyway, it's one of those things too that they don't advertise that. Like you said, you have to put it into the formula to figure out weight density is part of it. There's a lot of things that go into the foot-pounds. You can try to measure it out, but as we all know, once you pull the trigger on that shotgun shell, if everything was perfect, they'd all have the same amount of energy. What doesn't happen is perfection in a shotgun shell. And you'll see the ones that, duck, goose, turkey, it doesn't matter. The ones that penetrate, and you'll find the ones that are just under the skin for a variety of reasons, that take place. So, that said, not probably a great way to measure it, or you just kind of go with what we've learned over the time and had success with. So, all right. With that said, I want to know what you guys use and what you might be willing to try. So, Michael, what's your go-to turkey load?
Well, for a long time, it was Winchester Double X's, 5-shot. But there a couple years ago, for whatever reason, I could not find it in store. So I went to Winchester Longbeard XR 5-shot and 1,200 FPS, 12-gauge, 3-inch shells. And that's what I've shot ever since. And works pretty well for me. I kill birds with it, so I can't complain.
Jeff?
And there's so much, I'm not going to go into all the detail. There's so much I want to say about this because coming to the conclusion is not as much as is more important than what I would pick because what I pick doesn't mean it works in everybody else's gun and so forth. But
we'll get into that.
Yeah, we'll get that later. My diehard has always been 3-inch 5s, lead shot, and just absolutely pulverized turkeys. But when heavy shot came out, I started playing with heavy shot, and I can tell you right now, heavy shot is just phenomenal on turkeys. There's no question about it. I mean, it is, if you want to pay the price, it patterned incredibly well, and I got all the details for that. But, and again, heavy shot 6s were just 7.5, just pulverized turkeys. I've experimented now lately with the TSS and a 410, and I've only got 2 kills on the under the belt to make a judgment call. But for what I imagine a little 410 can or can't do to a turkey is impressive with the TSS loads in a number 9 shot and the pattern.
See, and that's interesting. We'll get into that one here in just a bit. Kayla, what's your go-to?
I also use Winchester 3-inch 5-shot. I couldn't tell you which Winchester other than it's a gray box with the turkey on it.
Super X. Yeah, probably Super X or Double X, yeah. They had a couple of different ones. My go-to that I really love is still the green Remington shells. The old Premier Magnums, 2 ounces of shot. I like 5. It's just kind of an odd number. Compromise between the 4s and the 6s. But really enjoyed that. I couldn't tell you the speed. You brought up speed, and I want to get into that as well. But it's one of those things that a turkey's not moving very fast when you're pulling the trigger. So it doesn't matter if within, if it kept that same muzzle velocity, doesn't matter if it's 3 or 4 football fields away. That it's going to get to that turkey before the bird knows it. But I always thought that the 2 ounces of shot, you remember that they used to try to pack early on as much lead into that as they possibly could, along with this maximum amount of powder, and it was kind of give and take. Put more pellets in, you lost a little bit of powder. Put more powder in, you lost a little bit of the pellets. But you can still find it every once in a while. But I've also got to give a shout out to a lot of the guns that I have, and I pattern it quite a bit. Them all, Federal, and some of their different loads that they've had throughout the years. I really like that flight control wad for getting just a little bit tighter. Phenomenal. Out there, I've had good luck with recently with one I believe they call the Grand Slam. It's all lead load. I've dabbled. I've shot turkeys with lead and steel. I haven't got into the expensive ones because I do think at times, like I said, since there's guys involved, I think we've kind of upped the game there. Looking at some of the lethality tables, and Jeff, you and I know the name Tom Roster. He's been around forever studying lethality and going through and seeing his recommendations. He doesn't talk about foot-pounds. Supposedly he had some minimums that he found in a piece that he put together in the something he did for a turkey symposium years ago called the relative effectiveness and lethal limitations of 3 lead and 3 steel pellet sizes for taking turkeys back to the National Wild Turkey Federation annual symposium in Charleston, South Carolina in the year 1990, but I cannot find it. I found the notes from that symposium and didn't find his, so I reached out and we'll see if we can get those. But I haven't done the TSS stuff or the heavy shot because I really haven't needed to in a lot of things. I kind of get under the opinion that sometimes we try to overkill our turkeys. Now, Roster's lethality table actually shows pheasants as being one of the, for the size of the pheasant, one of the birds that requires a little bit bigger pellets than some average or same size ducks or even turkeys. And if you think about it, it's not because of the size of the bird. It has to do more with where you're shooting them. On a turkey, you're shooting for the head. Yep. Ducks, geese, oftentimes at least they're decoying, they're passing by. Pheasants, when you flush a pheasant, it's going what?
Away.
It's going away.
Straight away.
Well,
going away.
And keep in mind, these lethality indexes that Rossiter came up with, guidelines. He spent thousands and thousands of shells, going, and interviews and monitoring hunters in the field to come up with what he has on his index tables for lethality. And they're really good guidelines because they give us at least an idea of the differences, right? When you see how many pellets you should have at a 30-inch circle and how many pellets it takes to be lethal. Well, as you can imagine, a dove, 1 to 2 pellets is all it takes to be lethal in a lethal part of the bird. But when it comes to turkeys, now we're talking, at least twice that, maybe 4 or 5, lethal pellets in the lethal zone of the bird to kill the bird. And that's important because when you're patterning, you need to be able to guarantee that at whatever distance you're going to shoot at, you're getting enough lethal hits on that bird. And that's why with turkey patterning, and Hershey, maybe patterning isn't where you wanted to go yet, but patterning is critical because you have to make this assumption anytime you buy a box of shells. It's got enough velocity to get there. It's got enough energy to kill a bird when it does get there. And so beyond that, the best thing just to start looking at is pattern density. Because if it doesn't have the pattern density, it doesn't matter how fast it missed the bird, right? And it doesn't matter really how much energy it missed the bird with if it doesn't have a pattern to kill a bird. So you got to have pattern density. That's the first and foremost in any shot shell selection. And I think that's where a lot of hunters maybe don't put a lot of effort into it. I think they go out and buy a box of shells because it says turkey, nitro mag, whatever, and or TSS. It can't miss turkey? It's TSS. It's going to kill them dead. And so they don't pattern because at $12 a shot, it's kind of hard to.
and I'm not going to ask this because I don't really care. When's the last time you patterned your shotgun and shell combo? But what I am going to ask all of us,
every shell,
who likes to pattern their turkey gun with their turkey shell? Who loves that?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's my favorite. It's my favorite day to go to the range.
I hate it.
Well, and
I hate it. It hurts.
Not only does it hurt, but it jars the whole body. There's a pain, and then there's like, that didn't hurt before. That's down here even. Why does that hurt? But I will say this, and this is where I've always lamented at our turkey hunting workshops, because, what are you guys shooting? Some guys have those 3.5-inch shells, and I always tell them, they can't believe that me, I'm big diehard turkey hunter, that I'm not shooting a 3.5-inch 12 gauge. And I always tell people that doesn't even make sense to me, because the recoil in foot pounds on a 3.5-inch 12 gauge shell is 84 pounds, roughly, 84 pound. 458 Win Mag, 84 pounds. And so, I've never understood the idea of shooting something that kicks as much as an elephant rifle to kill something the size of a turkey. Makes no sense. It makes no sense. When 3-inch shells, and I had one guy argue at one of our workshops, he can kill them out to 75 yards. And I was like, maybe. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen, but, that's just not very consistent. No.
And I'm glad you bring that up, because I know our good friend Tom Roster, the one we respect quite a bit, Jeff. I can't say I know him personally, but I've attended his workshops, been following his stuff, and talk about decades of working and patterning and all that, like you said. He's not saying it can't happen with some of those.
Not consistently. Yeah.
It's just he's not there to show what could possibly potentially kill a turkey at what distance and how far it is, or what's the biggest pellet size you should go with, because all that. He's going to go with, this is the one we found with the most consistency. Yep. And I think with turkeys especially, we're often taught to do it wrong, and we'll probably do it wrong here when we do our patterning workshop just a little bit. It's not put up that piece of target that looks like a turkey head, right? And see what that 8.5 by 11 shows you. It's how big a piece of paper is he talking about putting up?
30-inch circle.
A 30-inch circle.
And then count the number of hits in that circle. And we've attended his workshops, and we've gone through this. And the reality of it is his numbers are not far off, I'm sure, because of the number of repetition the redundancy that he's seen in this, right? And so, and I don't remember off the top of my head, what is it, like 210 pellets in a 30-inch circle for any turkey loaded any distance to be effective. Well, at 5 yards, you're going to blow a hole through that 30-inch circle like that. You got all your pellets in there, right? At 25 yards, that pattern really starts to open up, but not terribly. You're in the 20-inch circle, and you're just killing it, and there'll be strays all over that 30-inch, but and so you start going out 30, 35, 40, 45 yards. And here's where the energy thing comes into play. And you can pattern, you can tune a shotgun to pattern extremely well out to 60, even 70 yards. But I don't know that there's any of them that'll get 70 or 210 pellets in a 30-inch circle at that yardage. But that's where that's where he had brought up energy in the past. And I just know I saw something, read something that was like 4.7 pounds of energy per pellet. And the reason for that is, the reason I throw that in there, because it is, it's kind of hard. How do you measure and how do you decide if that's the factor? But if you could pattern out to 100 yards, would that pellet, would enough pellets have enough energy? And no, they wouldn't. In fact, usually number 6 shot was running out of energy, in lead was running out of energy at about 35 to 40 yards. And so you start going from there. You say, well, heavy shot, 60% denser or whatever, so what's it do? Or TSS is 80% or 70%, I forget, denser. What can it do? Well, if you do the math, 60% or 70% of those 30 yards, you start adding a little bit more to it. It's not getting you out to 100. It's not getting you to 70. Might get you to 45 or 50, but boy, that takes some practice.
Now, again, I haven't seen the paper, so I can't quote this, but I've found a couple mentions in different agency websites and stuff that roster says right around 2 pounds. That's what Again, haven't seen if that's true or not, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is something that you can definitely figure out. And I think for the most part, if you stay within the minimum, or excuse me, not the minimum, the middle, and this is something, Jeff, I've often attributed to your deer bullet weight theory. If you can stay right there in the minimum, not minimum. I keep saying that. If you stay in the middle of the road,
yep.
If you're not going with the biggest you could use or the smallest, it's probably a pretty good spot. And I'd say the same for turkey pellet size. Especially lead. That seems like what most of us shot and done with. 6, 5s, 4s. 4 is probably getting up there. As you increase density, you can drop that down just a little bit, like you said. So it's never a bad thing. According to this is from the Outdoor Life article that he posted, his greatest lethality for non-toxic shells. He doesn't ever talk about lead in these things, but he does talk steel and heavy shot. His best for turkeys, head and neck shot, steel number 4s, and heavy shot number 6, 3 to 4 pellets in the kill area, the head, the neck, and like you said, Jeff, 210 to 230 pellets in that 30-inch circle. Choke tubes, we'd have to get into a little bit. Different ones if you're shooting non-toxic steel, heavy shot, the tungsten super shot, or what a lot of folks just call TSS required. It's a little harder, a little rounder. Different choking than lead and some of those softer ones, bismuth as well.
Okay, so this brings into another factor because, it's hard to talk about just which load would you pick without talking about patterning, which we've talked about now, but also the choke size. And, we're often going to recommend that when you go into some of this harder shot, now Hershey, you've said this term many times, and I love it. I agree. It's exactly what it is. Setting off a shotgun is called controlled chaos. It's just controlled chaos when those BBs are all coming down the barrel fighting for right to be out front and whatnot. So it is controlled chaos. And when you put that constricted at the end of the muzzle, you can do sometimes more damage to the pattern without even thinking, because that controlled chaos is less controlled or more controlled based on the different shot type. And so, when we might have gone to those super full turkey choke tubes that were designed for lead, and they worked really well for lead, now when we get into heavy shot or TSS loads, we're often backing off on that and opening those choke tubes up a little bit. And I think it's like 0.665 in that range, or 0.660, because we don't want to constrict it too much, because once we get that constriction too tight on that denser, harder shot, we add, ironically, more controlled chaos, or a ricochet factor of those pellets coming together and then leaving the barrel and just spreading out wildly. And so sometimes you go back to a modified type choke, or even just a full choke, a regular full choke, non-extended or whatever, or extended full, can be really good. And that's when we found out that extended chokes can work really well for these types of loads, because constricting them with a real fast and real tight, real short constriction often causes more chaos. Whereas if you extend the constriction out so that it's a longer choke tube sticking out about 1 or 2 inches out of the barrel, it reduces the amount of chaos into that constriction. It doesn't constrict it too fast. And so a little bit of science behind it, but there's some changes that people need to be aware of.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's one of those that if you just go without looking and you grab a box of shotgun shells that has a turkey on it, whatever the price, whatever it's made out of, and you go grab a choke tube for your shotgun that has a picture of a turkey, they might not work real well together. Yeah. There's a lot of the manufacturers that have kind of worked with the specific loads. We've got real specific in there that you're going to want to try to match it up. But the patterning is huge. Now, speed. Anyone have any idea how fast they go? Michael, you already said the speed of yours. What was it at?
1,200.
1,200. I think mine's around 1,250 or something like that, if I was to guess, but I don't know off the top of my head. Any idea how fast you guys are going?
Sounds about right.
Pretty darn fast.
Because,
I'll tell you that much.
Speed, it's one of those things that we hear a lot. Speed kills. But there is a point where once you push those round pellets so fast, regardless of what it's made out of, it seems like it actually starts to hurt.
Yeah.
Not just you, not just in the recoil, which it is going to do, but it actually blows your patterns away.
It really can. And always understand, energy is a function of weight and speed. And so speed can help, but when it comes to itty bitty pellets, it's not like if you push a 200 grain rifle bullet another 300 feet per second, you're going to get significantly more energy. That doesn't translate over to little bitty round pellets. So if you kick up that speed from 1,100 to 1,300, it isn't like the energy goes up significantly, because we're talking about such a small small pellet. That's why I said earlier, though, you start to increase the density of that pellet with some of these newer shots, it does have a little bit of an impact. But the reality of it is, Hirsch, you nailed it at the very beginning of the show. We're shooting at a stationary target. Whether it gets there at 1 microsecond or 1.1 microseconds is not going to have any impact on the outcome. So if you assume that all pellets are moving at a velocity sufficient enough to kill a bird, which they are, they wouldn't be making a lot of them, speed is not, to me, a very relevant factor.
And this is one that I don't think that the number has changed at all back to Tom Roster again from the early steel loads, talking waterfowl when lead's important and crossing shots and upland birds as well. I don't think, regardless of powder, regardless of choke tube, regardless of pellet density or what it's made out of, size, anything like that, he is held firm. If you push those pellets more than 1,400 feet per second, you're hurting your pattern.
I would agree.
He has really, and he's restated that in this Outdoor Life article that I've been kind of pointing towards. I better tell folks where this is coming from. Is steel shot effective? Here's what the data says after decades of testing. It was published February 22nd, 2023 by Tom Roster, Outdoor Life. You can just kind of Google Outdoor Life Tom Roster lethality, and it should pop up. Now, he was mainly talking about waterfowl in this one, but it also has turkeys and doves and pheasants listed in this one for non-toxic. But that's one thing that's always stuck with me way back when I did take his workshop is you push it too fast. And at that time, we were starting to see loads at 1,400 feet per second and 1,425. And now I think you go to the store, Michael, and I think you can find 1,600 feet per second and 1,700 feet per second on some shotgun shells. Not so much turkey loads as waterfowl loads that are out there.
Yeah. And again, no free lunches, right? If you're going to drive it faster, you're driving less stuff faster, usually. And so if you're going to reach those 1,400 feet per second, you're driving less BBs at 1,400 feet per second than you are at 1,200 feet per second. Because if you put more powder in, shells only got so much space. You got to take out something. And they're not taking the wad, so you're taking out BBs.
Which is really cool, too. And if you want to see some really neat slow motion shotgun patterning stuff, there's a YouTube channel. I'm not going to get this right. I think it's called Surviving Duck Season. I've paid attention. They've got a super slow motion camera that can watch the first pellet coming past and the last pellet. They were looking at shot string and how that impacts. But they've been able to show that after that initial real fast movement out of the muzzle, as you get to 20, 30, 40 yards, I can't remember what the distances were, that faster stuff loses the speed the quickest. And pretty soon at the spots where we're hitting them, they're almost, basically in scientific terms, they're traveling a little bit faster, but insignificantly faster than the slow moving pellet at that same distance.
And think about density, because density on the pellet is incredibly important here. Go steel shot. Steel shot can be driven pretty fast. Why? It's lighter, and you can zip it out there pretty fast. But like you said, loses energy much faster. And so, we had to adjust for that when we pick shot size. Lead, you can drive that maybe, close to as fast, not as fast, but it doesn't lose its energy as fast. So that was a benefit. And of course you get to the heavy shot, tungsten iron, and all that, because now it changes the game on a lot of things. But I love where the manufacturers have gone, and hats off to Federal. Now other manufacturers are using the same similar technology. Federal started it with, I believe, with the TSS loads, but Federal realized this, that, there's two factors here, pattern density and the density of the individual pellet that's hitting the target. And if you can increase the pellet density, you've got penetration. If you can increase pattern density, you've got distance. You can increase the distance to the target. And TSS has kind of done that, I think. And I'm just excited about these things. I'm not excited about paying $12 a shell, so I'm not in that game. But I really like where they went, because we got the best of both worlds now. Now we got distance, and we've got energy when it gets there. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, well, be ready to pay more.
$12 a shell is a little bit more.
It is one of those things. It's under review right now, the TSS and what it can do and what it can't do and all that type of stuff. But it has been. This is a quote: "TSS, the world's most expensive shot ever." Keep in mind, there's two densities. There's 18 GCCs. What is that? Grams per something, I don't know. And I believe there's 16. There's two different things. But I think that a lot of it comes from parts of the world that we're not always big allies of. Can I say that?
and see, that's another issue. And
So-
then you gotta take those factors into account too. But let me ask you this. Now, Kayla, I'm going to throw this back to you. You're on a hunting trip. You know, you and Clayton decided to head out and go out to Pine Ridge and turkey hunt. You booked a hotel. You got your licenses. You got all the food. You went out there, drove all the gas. You got out there. You got this big blind, fancy blind and calls and all this kind of stuff. When that bird's coming in, do you care that you paid $1 for that shell, $3 for that shell, or $12 for the shell that's in your gun?
My budget does.
Well, I understand.
All right.
I
there you go.
understand.
There you
And
go.
I've already said that as well, that I'm not in that bracket. But I guarantee you, at that point in time, most hunters would be like, that's not the most significant factor here, right? Yes, it is probably the most significant factor in killing that bird at the moment. So I think an argument could be made, but I'm not in the TSS camp other than with the 410 because there's no realistic load until you get to TSS in my
I'm going to
opinion.
toss out two things. One is, where was I going with this? One, you got to have confidence in that, in your setup, right? I mean, the only way you build confidence is what?
Yeah, success.
Seeing what it does.
Yeah.
Yep, seeing success, whether that's birds. And this is where you see folks that, will argue with 4 decades worth of scientific research and data collection and all that stuff in the actual wild, in the lab, all that type of stuff, because they, if I saw success right here at the base of this tree, that 1 or 2 turkeys, they'll argue with any science. It's kind of interesting. But yep, so it's the success, paper or in the field. That comes from being able to do what we were talking about, pairing the right gun with the right choke tuber combination and the shot shell and all that type of stuff, which is good. But I'm going to go back to that whole idea that turkeys have been taken with every size shotgun that's legal, right? 410 all the way to 10 gauge. And so it can be done. It's one of those things that, Jeff, you and I know, one of our old wildlife biologists, never used anything more than a 2 3/4 inch load. That most pheasant hunters might use it early season, but probably not so much late season. And he had, and probably still does, since he's still chasing turkeys, great success with it. I would say that at times we probably are overgunned
Most of the time.
for turkeys. And it all depends. Again, it's that variable, right? What's the distance? Whether you've got confidence in that gun because you know what it can do. What distance would you say most of your turkeys are shot at? The turkeys you've harvested, what distance? You can give me a ballpark figure because I know a lot of us, I've started carrying a rangefinder more than I ever have while I'm turkey hunting.
I'd say almost every turkey I've shot has been within 35 yards.
Within 35 yards.
By far, yeah.
Probably closer to 25 or less.
Oh, you're gonna enjoy Nebraska then.
Yeah.
My God, you can see them for miles here.
The anticipation will just kill me.
And I guarantee you, most of my birds, 15, 20 yards.
15, 20 yards.
I'd say 90% of them.
Yeah.
I'm around that 20-yard area as well.
And I know that a lot of the listeners are probably tossing out numbers there anywhere from, as close as I can get them to, which is the archer hunters, to 40, 50 yards, that type of thing. And so it's one of those things. When I first started turkey hunting, I'd say most of my shots within 20 yards because that was thicker timber, more rolling hills. Here in Nebraska, a little bit more open spots. And if you could call them across a 200-acre field, is not uncommon, and having them close that last little bit. And I got to say that archery hunting has made me a better turkey better turkey hunter. I got to say that, not better turkey hunter in a lot of ways. One of them is I do carry the rangefinder because a few yards can make all the difference. But I'd like mine between 25 and 35 yards. If they get much closer, my nerves are going so bad. I have shot them, but you jerk that trigger a little bit too hard or something like that. It's that really super tight pattern can go flying right over their head or past them, and they look at you and gobble. But that said, I paid a lot more attention. Now as these birds are coming across that bean stubble, all right, 60, all right, 55, all right, 40, all right. And you do see how close they can get. And at those distances that you guys are tossing out, there's a lot of turkey loads it would work.
All turkey loads, and that's my point. All turkey loads, and that's my point. All turkey loads will work
quite a few
for
pheasant
90,
loads.
90, and 90% of all pheasant loads will work 90% of the time because at that range, because they're 90% of my shots are going to be at close range. It doesn't take a lot, and so it's usually a moot point. But you and I have both been in situations where 50, 55 yards, that bird just holed up right there, strutting his butt off and won't come in. And if you had a load that you consistently patterned at that range, no problem whatsoever, and you knew it had the lethality, that'd be a difference maker on some hunts. It really, really could.
I don't know if I could clip my release onto the bowstring or not. That's a ways.
Oh, we're talking archery now?
Oh, no, it's one of those things that, again, confidence comes from knowing what it'll do. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of our take-home messages. Figure out what your gun, what your pattern can do. Don't go for the marketing, Michael, that says high shock. We talked about it a little bit. There isn't much transfer of energy from the pellet to the bird. It's all about what's it penetrating, what's it hitting, and is it vital, and speed. Be careful of that speed, especially on turkeys. Like you said, doesn't need it.
Yeah.
Doesn't need it.
Yeah.
So we'll see. So that's kind of where that comes back to how much you're willing to spend on shotgun shells. Now, I think what we're going to see in the future, and this is me just getting the crystal ball out here by this wrinkled old apple that we have, you're going to see some more tungsten getting mixed with other alloys.
Yeah.
Just to help bring that price point down, perhaps to extend some of the supply of tungsten as well. I don't know that the supplies are limitless by any means, and where they're coming from oftentimes can affect what will you have. And I think that's why we see a couple of different densities on the market already. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Fun stuff. This will be debating for some time.
It is in camps all the time. I've sat around the campfire with friends and fellow hunters debating it. Yeah, and there is a little bit of science, but at the end of the day, there's also just broad experience and applying that experience as well. But, again, the last sound sometimes a turkey will ever hear in my blind is switching out shells real quick because I don't want to waste a heavy shot load on a bird at 20 yards. I'm cheap.
Back to that expensive blind way out west in Nebraska.
I'm cheap too.
Let me just grab the $10 box
We're
here
taking
right
the $10
quick.
shell out. I don't do $10 shells, but we're taking the $7 shell out and we're putting in the 50-cent $1 shell because it just overkill is silly, but dead is dead. And but I think that you marketing guys, that's what gets
110% deader.
Yeah,
That's right. That's right. You got to sell somehow.
We're like, my God, that's a lot deader. We'll buy that. We're gonna pay more for it. Well, yeah, I want them 110% dead.
Everybody likes their bird more dead.
Well, they don't like them less dead. That's for sure. So there seems to be a pattern there, but that marketing gets us, and I think there's no question about it. More money is spent on from the marketing side than just what you really need, because you don't need a lot, and overkill is overkill, and I think we're in the overkill range.
Yeah, there you go. But neat to see some of those sub gauges kind of gaining popularity and opening back up some possibilities. All right, folks, we're going to have to put the old bow on that episode there. If you've got a different opinion or thought, make sure you comment down below. In the meantime, give us a thumbs up, a subscribe, so you know when the next episode drops. Until then.
Hunt Nebraska, brought to you by your Nebraska Game and Parks Commission.